Hey everybody, this is Bart Hansen for Crush Live Poker, and today we are going to get into a vlogger review of a recent hand that was played by Andrew Neeme on Hustler Casino Live. Of course, Hustler Casino Live, they basically stream every single night cash games, and this one comes from November 22nd. And the hand that we are going to take a look at here comes from 4 hours and 12 minutes into that night. You can watch them all over on the Hustler Casino Live YouTube. Now, I'm going to have to tell you what happened here really quick because they were doing an interview with Mickey. So we actually join the action after a few things have happened here pre-flop. Basically, Andrew Neeme, who's sitting with $8,830, raises with King Queen of Hearts to 80 from the hijack. Adam 22 3-bets the button with just about the same stack to 300 with 4-5 of hearts. And Mickey here, now we pick up the action on Mickey. He has ace-king offsuit and he covers everyone and he just calls. So right here we have some things to discuss. Now, I did commentary on Mickey for, I would say, at least 15 hours a few months ago. So it was Neeme opens, button 3-bets, Mickey calls. If I was Neeme here, I would probably almost always put in the 4-bet. I just saw so many flat calls from Mickey with garbage hands to 3-bets that the overlay that you're getting here with King Queen of Hearts is just too good. I think I'm 4-betting every single time here. And of course, Mickey should be cold 4-betting the 3-bet with ace king off. They're playing basically 7-handed and it's 10-20 with a 20 big blind ante. But Neeme doesn't think about it too long and just calls. And we're going to go to the flop with the poppy $940 with Adam 22, legendary podcaster here, with the betting lead. So interesting flop here. Jack deuce 8 with a couple hearts. Interesting because both players here, Neeme and Adam 22, have both flopped a flush draw. Now, Mickey checks, Neeme checks, and it gets over here to Adam 22. And usually with a flush draw, if I were to 3-bet in this spot, I would be doing a fair amount of betting here, especially because it is multi-way. I actually want to get hands like ace-king offsuit to fold, things like that. Any types of like random hands, if someone were to have, say, pocket 4s, pocket 5s, 3s, 7s, I want all those hands to fold. We also have some backdoor equity here too with 4-5 of hearts. Obviously, Andrew Neeme made the standard play and checked it over to the pre-flop raiser, but Adam really thought about this one for quite some time. He went over to his chips. As you can see, the whites are hundreds and the greens are 1Ks, and the chocolate ones are $10, but he decides to check it back, which is definitely non-standard, I think, 3-betting with 4-5 of hearts and getting this flop. Now the turn here is an ace, and that is also an action card because it gives Mickey top. It also improves Andrew Neeme's hand here, where he picks up a gut shot Broadway straight draw to a 10 with his heart draw. And now Adam 22 also picks up a wheel draw here to a 3. So a super action card. Now Mickey checks, which is somewhat standard. Andrew also checks here, and it gets over here to Adam. And again, if I was Adam, I would probably be doing a ton of betting here. Now, it's true that somebody could have caught an ace because of the fact that this one got checked around the flop. This is why I actually like to be doing a lot of betting on the flop, because if Adam had bet, and let's say only Neeme called, or anyone else had called, he can continue to barrel this card. It's a great card to put in a double barrel. And if you start a bet on the flop and you get a hand like ace-king to fold out on the flop, then you don't have to worry about somebody actually catching an ace on the turn because the flop got checked around. Now, we've all seen Mickey play. It's debatable whether he would have folded, the flop to a bet like this, although he probably should in a multi-way pot. But that's kind of the theory behind betting the flop with a hand like 4-5 of hearts so that you can give yourself the opportunity to double barrel some really good cards on the turn, which is exactly what we have here. Still, though, even if I did check back the flop, I would still be betting here a lot of the time with 4-5 of hearts, as there is absolutely no showdown value, and you now have a 2-way draw with the wheel draw on the turn. So I'm really, really surprised that Adam 22 actually checked this one back rather quickly. I mean, he has absolutely nothing here. It's interesting, if he had bet the turn, what Mickey would have done with ace-king, would he have just called? And then possibly if you're Andrew Neeme, do you think you might actually check raise squeeze here? Because when somebody, as the three better, checks back the flop and then bets the turn when the ace appears, that tends to cap their range a lot at single paired aces, unless they were checking back the flop with like Jack as a slow play or aces, which people tend not to do in a multi-way pot. So if it went bet call, I might have seriously considered check raising if I was Neeme, but obviously that doesn't happen. And the pot's still only $940 as we go to the river. And what an action card here on the river. Now, Mickey, who had the best hand on the turn, he checks again here with the heart. And you can see that Andrew and Adam 22 both have flushes. This is not a common, obviously, occurrence in Hold'em. Now, there's no reason for Andrew Neeme not to bet here after this one gets checked around. It obviously looks like Adam 22 might have a hand like tens, something like that, or maybe was playing some pot control with like queens or a king jack type of hand. And, this one's going to get checked through a lot because you would think that someone's going to bet off a flush draw. And you want to get value just in case if Mickey had caught an ace, which is exactly the situation. So Andrew Neeme actually takes a very large sizing here at the end. He's going to bet 80-90% of the pot, almost the full size of the pot here on the river. So he bets $820. Now, this is a really, really interesting situation here for Adam 22. By the way, this street is the most interesting of this entire hand because you've got Neeme coming out and betting almost the full size of the pot. And you have the absolute lowest flush that you could possibly have in a given scenario. Now, obviously, Neeme could be betting hands like sets that were going for a check raise, say, on the flop or on the turn, and obviously, not getting the opportunity to because it got checked through. But there are still a lot of flushes here that Neeme could have. All ace X of hearts would be represented. I think that Neeme would probably open all of those, like ace 6, ace 5, and maybe just call. And then you've got the Broadway flushes like king, queen of hearts, king 10 of hearts, any Broadway types of flushes. So I actually think that this is really, really close here. If you're Adam 22, it's very, very close to just a call. Now, what makes me sometimes think that a raise is okay here is the fact that you've played it so non-standard and people would expect you to bet a flush draw a lot. So if Neeme did have a set or he did have a hand like ace jack, he might get curious here at the end. There's also another thing to note that you might want to call to rope Mickey in to call behind, because if there's a chance that Neeme might actually be bluffing here, if you raise, you might get Mickey to fold out an ace and Neeme's just going to fold. Whereas if you call, not only do you do a little bit of stack protection, but you might rope Mickey in to make a call, not even just with an ace, but we've seen Mickey call with like a Jack X type of hand, something like that. So I think that this is the very close inflection point here on this river. Now, if you do decide to raise here, though, you absolutely have to be prepared for what is really one of the bread and butter plays at Live No Limit, which is raise folding for value. We always talk about bet folding, but you can also raise fold for value. What does raise folding for value means? It means you're raising with a hand that you think is good that can get called by worse. But if you're re-raised, you fold. It is not turning 4-5 of hearts into a bluff. It is a raise fold for value. So Adam 22 does make the raise here to 2,200. Mickey is actually going to think about it for a while and give him credit. He finally is going to make the fold because I've actually seen him call with hands that are a lot weaker than this. And now we get back over to another interesting inflection point, which is Andrew Neeme's hand. Because the way that this hand has gone down, he has gotten raised here at the end. And I think this is so interesting when you're doing hand reading on flushing types of boards. Because Neeme holds both the second and the third nut, and also the jack is out on the board, then the only really lower flushes here that are available that might 3-bet pre-flop would be hands like, say, 10-9 of hearts, 7-8 of hearts, 9-8 of hearts, something like that. What's interesting about those particular hands is that they're all pretty big combo draws on the flop. 9-10 is a open-ended straight draw and a flush draw. 8x of hearts is pair and a flush draw. Almost all of those hands are going to be doing some betting. So really then, the other smaller flushes that are reasonable, maybe 3 bets that I might even be a little bit wider, like just 4-5 and maybe like 6-7, something like that. Then you have the ace X of hearts hands. Now you would think that ace X of hearts would be doing some betting on the flop and maybe some betting on the turn, but it's possible that he might check back something like ace 5 of hearts, ace 6 of hearts, especially with a sticky guy like Mickey in there who cold called in the small blind, which, he might have a lot of offsuit broadways. Then on the turn, you decide to also check it back. I'm not saying that we're going to get here a lot with ace X of hearts, but what I'm saying here for Neeme, if I specifically hold king, queen of hearts, and I do think that my opponent could hold ace X of hearts, and I think that he probably doesn't have 9-10 of hearts, and he doesn't have 8X of hearts, you can see that there actually are a lot more combos of ace X of hearts that will obviously snap, call, or raise here than smaller flushes. And even if Adam 22 has a smaller flush, he might not call a jam. Now, what's interesting here is the stack sizes. It's 1380 for Neeme to call, and if he does decide to shove, it's just about a pot size shove. It's probably just over a pot size shove here, so it's not a small raise. Now, they were also playing some game called 4-5, where similar to the 7-deuce bounty. I mean, we can always make up that someone might have 4-5. I mean, 4-5 suited is just one specific hand, right? And when you're playing one of these games, it doesn't have to be a suit. But I actually think that this jam is a little too light here. If I was Neeme, I would just call here for the reasons that I stated when doing hand reading on the flop, that a lot of those combo draws are going to bet the flop. So really, when you get here at the end, you're going to be up against just a sheer bluff that Adam's just making a play at it, thinking that Neeme doesn't have a flush draw, which is going to fold. Really very few combos of small flushes. And then you might run into the nut flush. And I think that Adam actually might have the nut flush here more often than he has 4-5 of hearts or 6-7 of hearts. Because Adam isn't necessarily always 3-betting 4-5 of hearts, 6-7 of hearts. Pre-flop, he probably has more of a tendency to 3-bet off ace X of hearts in these spots. And then again, you have to look at how often are these types of hands betting. So if I were Neeme here, I probably would just have called. And I actually think it's probably not even that close given this action because the raise is so polarized and we see so much of a reflection of ace X of hearts in this given scenario. But Neeme thinks about it for a while and he just moves it all in. Now back to Adam 22. And this is, again, probably even a more interesting part of the hand. So he's going to be getting about 2-1 here. It's 63-30, pot's about 11-6, he's getting about 1.8 to 1. So he needs to be good here about just over 1 out of 3 times. Now, even though he played this hand non-standard, there's a couple of things to look at here in terms of what he is behind to. He's got the 4-5 of hearts. And if we were to think about what hands are bluffs here, because Adam 22 just has a bluff catcher now. He just has a bluff catcher here with 4-5 of hearts with what Neeme is representing. So what would be the primary bluff in this spot for Neeme? It would be hands that contain the ace of hearts in it. Now, this is a 3-bet pot. Remember, Andrew opened the hijack and called 3 bets. So what hands, this is great and a great exercise in hand reading, what hands actually would do that from his position and call a 3-bet? Well, I don't even know if he has ace king all that much because I think it's going to be 4-bet off. Maybe once in a while ace king off with the ace of hearts. Maybe once in a while ace queen off with the ace of hearts. Ace jack, if it's played, is 2-pair, and I don't think that Neeme is going to turn 2-pair into a bluff. And I don't even think he has ace 10 off calling 3 bets. So when you really get down to the brass tacks of it, if Neeme is mostly 4-betting ace king off, because remember, Mickey cold called in the small blind, so he's very incentivized to squeeze, you're kind of left with just ace queen with the ace of hearts. And going back to something that we have on Crush Live Poker, the small stakes exploit guide, one of the biggest exploits that you can learn about is that most players don't turn what they could perceive to be fairly strong hands into bluffs. Neeme would have to re-raise all in with the bare ace, which is top pair. You will see this spot much more common than someone, if they're capable of 3-bet bluffing the river, do it with the bear ace when they have nothing, when they just have ace high. But Neeme would have top pair here. And when you take a look at the way that the hand goes down, would he raise 3-bet all in with ace queen? He'd probably just call because it looks like Adam has a lot of bluffs here, the way that this went down. He didn't bet the flop, didn't bet the turn. What is he representing here? So a lot of times ace queen is going to be good enough to call. Why would you 3-bet all in a spot like that? So for Adam, if he's going to stick his neck out and raise at the end, and I think that it was close, he has to find the raise fold button here in this particular spot because the primary bluff is going to be top pair, and it's just so unlikely here that Neeme's really going to have it. Like I said before, I think that actually this jam is too light by Neeme because 4-5 of hearts and 6-7 of hearts really should fold. And I think that Adam 22 eventually just kind of talked himself into making the action that he eventually does because of the fact that he sort of played it in a really strange way. But maybe he just didn't, get on board with the fact that Neeme's really just primary bluff is going to be, ace X of hearts. He doesn't have that much ace X of hearts, and ace X of hearts is top pair here. So I think I find a fold here. I'm not going to say rather easily, but I think if you are going to raise the river, this is a fold. But unfortunately for him, he does call, and vlogger Andrew Neeme takes down an $18,000 pot here on Hustler Casino Live. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and be sure to subscribe to this channel down below. And to get more live cash game, no limit training, head over to crushlivepoker.com and you can use the code YTA400 to get the first 30 days for free.